Hi, everyone, and welcome to this very special podcast. We have good brother and returning friend, Mr. B. Those of you who've been on the podcast a while are familiar with his body of work and his expertise and his great articulation on the Keynesian system and how we transition into the new digital asset-backed economic system we always talk about. So the marriage of the two worlds intersperses quite well. And he's going to be giving us today his summation on the remainder of the first quarter into the second quarter, what he sees for the stock market, housing market, and how precious metals plays a pivotal role in that. If you're new to the podcast, please do like, subscribe, and share. Helps the channel grow and others gain the knowledge you're currently being afforded. Excuse me, Mr. B has been working for Charles Schwab for nearly 3 decades. He is, in my humble opinion, a subject matter expert on numbers and financial statistical analysis, which is primarily what he does there. And he is definitely contrarian to the old Keynesian system, but he still understands it well and helps us how to navigate it in simplest terms to see where we're going from where we've been. And he's got a presentation to show us once again today. Now, folks, don't misunderstand. We have time constraints today. So if I cut him off, it's not to be rude. It's just to stay within the time constraints. So please know that. And he knows that as well. I'm honored to bring him back once again. My good friend and brother, Mr. B. Thanks for joining us and putting us together today. How are you doing?
Good, John. Thanks for inviting me to your show, and I'm a little under the weather today, but I'll try to do the best I can.
You always have for many decades, my friend. Always reliable. And I love you for that. Okay, so I've set the stage already. So for those who are familiar, they know your work. So without further ado, I know you have a presentation to share. So I'm gonna shut up, turn that over to you, and then we'll kind of just go through it as we go.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Not as of yet,
Oh, okay.
but I know that's forthcoming. So let's see. I think something's coming up now. There we go.
Okay.
Great.
Uh, You can see everything okay, Ray?
Yep. Floor is yours.
Okay. Today we're going to concentrate on the tailwinds for silver, and there's quite there's many, and it seems like we're adding to that list every day. So I thought it'd be good, since we concentrated on gold my last interview, that we would concentrate more on silver today. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over the numbers in the market. Uh, I know you and your listening audience like that. And then we're going to go over what the experts on silver, their targets for silver. We're going to start with that. And then I'll go through the list of the current tailwinds to silver, and then we'll end up with the question and answer. Here's the standard disclaimer. Nothing I'm about to say is investing advice. It's my personal opinion, and also research on people that I believe in and follow. Okay, so let's cover the old targets. Um, the old targets for the melt up were the S&P 7500, the Dow 5500, the NASDAQ 2500, and the Russell 2K 3300. We had a target of gold for 3,400, silver at 75, oil at 60, the Dixie at 83, and the 10-year Treasury at under 3%.
Right.
I'm having a little trouble getting you out of the. Oh, there we go. Okay, getting you out of the picture. Okay,
Yep.
where we were back on 11/11/25, which was my last interview. Um, the S&P was at 6832. The Dow is at 48,368. The NASDAQ 25,611, and the Russell 2K was at 24,66, which was up. The S&P was up 16 16%. The Dow was up about 10%, a little over 10%. The NASDAQ was up 31%, and the Russell was up about 16.7. Gold and silver. Gold was at 41.08, silver at 50.48, and gold was up 21%, almost 22%, and silver was up almost 38. Oil back then was at 60.33, which was down 17.89 at that time. The Dixie, which is the dollar index, was at 99.59, which was up 55, half a percent. And the 10-year treasury is at 4.121, which was down about 6.15%. The targets back then was the S&P was 8,500. I had raised those. The Dow was 6,500. The NASDAQ was 32, and the Russell 2K I bumped up to 3,500. And back then we had 24, a little over 24% to the target, the melt-up target. The Dow was about 37%. The NASDAQ was almost 25%. The Russell was almost 42. So we had raised the targets on gold and silver. So we raised it from I think it was 3,500 to 5,000, and silver to 100. So at that point, it was about 22% to the target, and silver was 98 to that target. Oil was our target was under 60, and we were pretty close to that target. Again, 0.5% away. The dollar index was 83, and we're about a little over 16% to get to there. And the 10-year treasury, we want to be under 3%, and it was about 27.3 to get to that negative. And so here's all the targets for the melt up as of 11/11/25 in one picture, and where we were at that time. And any new targets since then? Yeah, I bumped up gold to 6,300, and from 5,000, and then silver up from 100 to 125. Other than that, everything remains the same. So there's the new targets of all those 5 different categories. Where we are currently, and this is from yesterday, the S&P was 68, 69.50, and that's what it was back on in November of last year. And now it's at 67.16, down about 2%. And we still have 26.55 to our target. So it remains, fairly flat over the last 4 months. The war going on has kind of affected, I believe, the stock market and the shock of that. The Dow was at 48,739.41, and it's now at 46,946, down about 3.68%. And we're still about 38.5 to the target. The NASDAQ was 22,807, and now it's at 22,479, which is down about 1.44 and still about 42% away from the target. And the Russell was 26,36.01, now 25.05, about 5% down. Or about 5% down, and about 39-40% to the target. So, like I said, we're since our last interview, we're pretty flat. We haven't made had very much progress toward what the melt up, and like I said, I think the war in Iran is responsible for some of that. Gold targets at 63 and silver at 125. We saw silver go to 100 twice. Interestingly, on the way up, and then about a day later on the way down. So we did have quite a spike there, and I get a feeling that the big banks stepped in and really suppressed the price back to where it is. I think today it's trading a little above 76. So they really smashed the price there. Gold was at 51.79, and now we're at well, at least since yesterday we were at 50.20. I think we're a little below 5,000. So we were down about 3%, and we're still about 25% away to the current target of 6,300. Silver is at 84.70. Now it's at 79.20, down about 6.49 and 58% to the target. Back back in November, we were at 76.98. Now we're up at 93.71, 24.74. Oh, and about 36% to our target. Again, the war in Iran is, with the Strait of Hormuz being shut down, is largely responsible for oil being at that level currently. The Dixie, the target's 83. It was at 98.33 back then. Now it's at 99.56. So it's up about 1.25, and we're still about 16.63 to our target. That's remained fairly flat. The dollar is, the strength in the dollar has been, pretty consistent over the last year. And last but not least is the 10-year Treasury. Our target's under 3%. It was at 4.11%. Now it's at 4.28. And I think that's kind of, again, responsible because of the action in Iran. And so it's up about 4.14%, and we're still about 30% away from the target. And so here's a picture of all those 5 categories and where we currently are, if you want to just take a look at that. So to start us off, we're going to do the expert price predictions by some of the leading experts in tracking the metals. Peter Schiff has a target of $100 silver, and 26. JP Morgan, interesting. I thought I'd add that to the list since they're the biggest manipulator, in my estimation, of the metal. They think it'll get to 81 in 2026. Michael Oliver is he's a momentum expert, and he thinks it's going to be 500. Francis Hunt, 300. He's a big trader, 333. David Hunter, 180. He's a macro contrarian. Peter Carath is a silver expert, 125. Mike Maloney is a gold and silver guy, and he sees it anywhere between 135 and 309. And Andy Scheckman, kind of gave the question, maybe, it could go all the way up to 300 this year. And then Don Durrett, an expert on the mining, says he's expecting gold or silver to be at 175 to 200. Tailwinds to silver. We'll start by a quote from Thomas Jefferson. Specie gold and silver coin is the most perfect medium because it will preserve its own level. Because having intrinsic and universal value, it can never die in our hands, and it is the surest resource of reliance in time of war. Now, the last presentation, we spent a lot of time explaining the tailwinds to gold, like I mentioned. Today, we're going to discuss the tailwinds to silver. And because the list continues to grow daily, we might not have time to list them all, like was mentioned previously. When I started out, I had about 4 or 5, but that list has grown almost to 30, and they're all good reasons. So, yeah, for time constraints, I don't think I'll be able to get all through them all. When I decided to buy silver years ago, I did it because, I could see our government was debasing our currency by endless printing. And I was looking for an affordable, a hard asset that lasted the test of time and to be a store of value. So I wanted to hedge the destruction of the dollar and the inflation that was causing. So silver was the only thing I could really afford at that time. Back then, a tube of silver, if you can believe it, a tube of silver eagles cost about 220. Now they're running about 2,000. But through the years, I discovered that silver was not only a store of value, but really it was to become a once in a lifetime investment. So again, when I started, I was just thinking, oh, it was just the, store of value. It was affordable that I could, take some of my savings and put towards. But the more I investigated it, the more I realized that silver had so many uses that it was kind of indispensable. So it had kind of a dual mandate. Not only was it monetary and investment, but it also was paramount in our current, economy and where we're going uh, to the future. Also, come to find out, silver had been manipulated for many years by the big banks, the exchanges, and the military industrial complex, and also by world governments. Technology, military, electricity, AI, healthcare, its scarcity, monetary, etc., have slowly elevated this metal to where it recently soared to its all-time high price and is really wreaking havoc with governments, military, and technology companies sourcing enough material to continue to electrification, AI, and manufacturing. So, when you think of it, about, less than 100 years ago, silver wasn't used in that many applications. It was used, in photography. It was used as antimicrobial uses as far as, purification of water. And of course, it was used for money. At that time, um, our money was silver and gold. So, but as the years rolled by, silver has been indispensable to our future economy and is used in almost everything. I kind of equate it to oil. It's just not used for gasoline and oil and stuff like that, but oil's used in everything, clothing and food, um, fertilizer. Well, silver's the same way. It's used in multiple applications. So many, it's hard to believe, actually. Like I mentioned before, the list is long. So let's begin to cover the many reasons I believe silver is one of the best investments on the planet, and it's still a great investment even at its current price. Where is silver currently being used? So if you go out to check where it's being used, you might run across a pie chart like this. We've got investment, silverware, jewelry, photography, and industrial. And so for my own edification, I decided, okay, well, here's the main categories that silver is used in. But I wanted to get to the brass tacks. I wanted to see where it's used in an industry. Where is that 58% going? So that's what we're going to cover right now, the current everyday uses. Let's start with the biggest slice of the pie chart, which is industrial uses for silver and the industrial demand. So there's been a surge in EVs, and a lot of people, when you hear it, it's just say, oh yeah, silver's used in electric, vehicles. But, when you list all the different places that they're used in EVs, the list is fairly long. You've got the battery management systems, not only just for the batteries, but it's essential for monitoring battery health and managing charge and discharge cycles, ensuring efficient power distribution, power electronics and inverters, electrical contacts and connectors, autonomous and safety features, advanced driver assistance systems, radar, cameras. We use silver on the printed circuit boards, the charging infrastructure. Not only do you have the EVs, but you've got to find a place to charge them, and silver is really crucial in those charging stations. Emerging battery technologies, the future solid state batteries. Um, one of those being Samsung. So there's going to be some overlaps as I go through these, but I think they're necessary because there's certain things like batteries that really need more in-depth knowledge on that. So as I go through, you'll notice that there will be a little overlap on some of these slides. In electronics, silver is essential in electronics due to its superior electrical and thermal conductivity. Commonly used in printed circuit boards, membrane switches, conductive inks, films, 5G, EV solar components. It's also found in long life batteries, connectors, and high currency contacts. The one thing about silver is too that I think make it a little more valuable than gold actually is, so much of the silver, it's rare actually, and it's consumed. So, when your computer's done, all the silver that's in that, ends up in a landfill. So a lot of the silver is basically consumed and never to be retrieved again. Gold, all the gold that's ever been mined is probably in a vault somewhere. It's used in jewelry. So, it's really just a store of value, but silver is a lot different. Not only is it used for that store of value and is, vaulted and stored and saved, but most of it is just consumed. So in electronics, we've got it's used in conductive pathways, switches and contacts, photovoltaics, like in solar panels, EV and 5G technology, the infrastructure for 5G uses it. And then, of course, batteries, and not just car batteries, but, many other types of batteries as well. Healthcare. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but silver is widely used in healthcare for its antimicrobial properties, particularly in wound dressings, medical devices, and topical treatments. So, first of all, you've got the medical applications of silver in wound care, which I didn't know about until I researched it. It's commonly incorporated in again in wound dressings and creams, Um, Things to prevent infections, burns, cuts, surgical wounds. These products release silver ions that kill bacteria and promote faster healing. It's used in medical devices. Silver coatings are applied to various medical devices, catheters, stents. Um, these coatings help reduce the risk of infections by preventing biofilm formation, which is a common cause of device-related infections. Topical treatments, creams, ointments to treat skin infections if you didn't know it, for conditions such as eczema, psoriasis. So it's used in antimicrobial services. So it's used in hospitals a lot to coat, the walls and the surfaces of the tables. And historically, silver has been used to combat infections for centuries. For example, silver nitrate was used to stop infection. And during World War I, silver foil was applied to battlefield wounds to prevent infection. So it's been known that silver's been a great antimicrobial um, use for a long time. In fact, if you go back in history, in India, they'd have these big old cisterns that were made of silver where they would put their water because it would preserve the integrity of the water. It's used in AI and robotics. Silver is essential to artificial intelligence and robotics because it is the most electrically and thermally conductive metal known. Its ability to handle high power loads with minimal resistance makes it indispensable in high density circuitry required for AI computations. And so another thing I wanted to mention is that, in AI and robotics, you can't use anything else. I mean, copper's not efficient enough. You think, oh, well, we could use something else, but you really can't. There's nothing to the level that silver is that can be used. It's used in AI data centers and high performance computing. Again, these processors and memory chips, nothing can replace silver. So as much as they try, it's really indispensable for what we're coming into in the future. So it's used for AI data centers and high performance computing, power distribution, robotics components, again, 5G and data connectivity, and of course, solar energy that's used for AI. Data centers. This is where a lot of the silver that we're importing today is used. Data centers, AI chips, circuit boards, connectors, thermal management systems. Again, it's unmatched electrical and thermal conductivity, reduces the energy lost in servers and enhances the efficiency in cooling. As AI grows, the demand for silver-laden infrastructure is skyrocketing. And what's interesting that U.S. imports, it's about 64% of the silver for these applications, which is amazing. So, it's definitely critical and needed for where we're going. The key uses, AI hardware and computing, power distribution, thermal management, infrastructure and storage, and the impact on the demand. The surge in AI data center construction is significantly boosting global industrial demand for silver. Due to its critical role in AI, the U.S. government added silver to its critical minerals list in late 2025. And large-scale data centers can require thousands of ounces of silver for its infrastructure. So again, it's critical for the data centers that we're building out. Mirror and glass. So for a long time, silver has been used as indispensable for mirror and glass. It's a highly reflective coating, about 95% reflectivity on the back of glass to create mirrors. And it's used, to provide superior, clear, and bright images. Through a silvering process, it is applied to glass for household mirrors, decorative items, and optical instruments due to its high reflectivity in the visible spectrum. So high quality mirrors, it's used in the silvering process, optical instruments used in telescopes, lasers, solar cells, protective and durability. The silver layer is typically coated with copper and paint to prevent, um, tarnishing. And modern applications beyond home use, silver-coated mirrors are utilized in specialized lighting and solar power generation. This is something I never really thought of, but I guess it's used a lot in engines. The engine bearings, silver is electroplated onto steel ball bearings and journal bearings in high performance and heavy duty engines, aerospace, locomotives, and it reduces friction and it improves durability. Lubrication, I had no idea that it acts as a solid lubricant on engine fasteners and bearings, capable of functioning at high temperatures. Electrical components, heat management, which is, I had no idea again. Silver's high thermal conductivity helps manage heat in engine components, including inverters in electrical vehicle powertrains, and brazing alloys. Silver-based alloys are used for brazing, which creates strong leak-proof joints in engine cooling systems and other components. And of course, corrosion resistance. It prevents corrosion on critical components. Energy, we've discussed this briefly. Solar energy, photovoltaics. It's used in silver paste in solar cells to capture and carry electrons, with the sector accounting for over 193 million ounces of demand in 2023. So the amount of ounces since that time, since 2023, has grown exponentially. Electronic vehicles and infrastructure, we've talked about those. The electrical grid and power generation. Due to its superior conductivity and durability, it is used in switches and relays for power distribution on the grid. Nuclear energy, I didn't know that it was used for that, but it's used to control the rods to safely regulate nuclear reactions. And then energy efficient technology, which we've discussed. Solar panels. We'll get into just a little bit more granular use of how silver is used in solar panels. It's essential for solar panels, again, for its superior electrical conductivity. And each silver panel uses about 20 grams. Some of the newer ones use more than that. It's applied as a paste, and it's used to collect and transport electrons generated from sunlight. And it's vital for high efficiency material. And again, it accounts for about 6% of the total panel cost. And really, like you hear a lot of people say, well, we'll just go to, if silver becomes too expensive, we'll go to something cheaper like copper. But you really can't, because the efficiency of silver is unmatched. So to use something like copper, the price of silver would have to go up dramatically for us to even think of that as a solution. And then, it would degrade the panels. So really, there's no replacement for silver in solar panels. So you got the function of it, usage per unit, the efficiency and demand, and then future trends. Again, despite its high cost, silver's reliability for 25 to 30 years lifespans makes it hard to replace. Again,
Mhm.
if we were to use copper, it rusts. Um, so they're looking to solar manufacturers are trying to reduce the amount of silver that's used, but it really makes it hard to do it because of its efficiency. Batteries, we talked briefly about batteries, but I wanted to kind of isolate batteries into one little slide because it's so important. Silver enhances battery performance by reducing internal resistance, increasing the capacity, which translates to better efficiency and longer usage times. It increases the lifespan of the battery by using silver, and safety enhancements. Silver contributes to better thermal management, reducing the risk of overheating and improving overall safety. And again, when you think of batteries, you think, oh, car battery, you know, but batteries, they're not the only batteries. You know, the um, you know, there there's tons of different types of batteries, and silver is used um, to make those efficient in all of them.
Right. Hey, Mr. B,
Again, nuclear power.
Mr. B, can you hear me
If
okay?
you want to slow down a nuclear reaction, you're going to need silver to control the rod to insert into the nuclear core, which is um, pretty important.
Right.
Silver captures neutrons and impedes the nuclear reaction just to remove the control rod and speed it back up again.
Yeah.
And so the reason I mention it is that I believe nuclear power will become, more used today. It's not demonized like it was back in the 90s and the
Yeah.
2000s, but
Hey, Mr. B, can you hear
it's
me okay? Mr.
having a big comeback. Big
Can you hear
comeback.
Mr. B, can you hear me okay? Hello?
Chemical production. I'm not sure if you know this, but it's used greatly in chemical production. Silver is a critical industry catalyst and reagent, primarily used in chemical production to accelerate oxidation reactions without being consumed. Its main roles include manufacturing ethylene oxide for plastics and antifreeze, for for formaldehyde for resins and textiles, alongside producing photographic chemicals and specialized sanitizing compounds. So it's a catalyst in the oxidation process, the production of chemical compounds. So it's also used in the catalyst and the oxidation process, the production of chemical compounds, specialized industry applications, and photographic chemicals. So again, it's used in a wide variety of things. So I could go on, but John, did you want to take it away from here?
Sure. Yeah, if you just back out of the screen, if you would, and then I'll have some questions for you, obviously, that I think certainly our team would like to know, the audience would, I'm pretty sure would like to know as well. So I'll let you back out of that. I will say, I also interviewed Mr. B, Lynette Zhang not too long ago, as you probably know, about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and she ardently believes silver will be around 2000. Ray Dalio, we've talked about. He has an aggressive silver price of at least 1200 to 2000 this year as well. We just had Noble Gold, our chief sponsor, on this week. Micah Haynes said that he's seeing the next leg up, going from 120 to about somewhere between 2 and 280 here around mid to late April. And there are reasons for that, which we'll get into. But You've always been great at statistical analysis from your career and transitioning into this medium. I think one of the things I'd like to know, and I believe many audience would appreciate knowing, is you had always said ardently in the past, if I remember right, that we're looking for a bubble in the stock market and the S&P to watch. Now we've seen the fake war slash regime change. Ultimately, my audience knows with Iran, Iraq, and the dinar and the real is really the impetus for that. Is wrapping up here pretty soon now with Ramadan and Eid ending here in the next couple of days. What is your target for this quarter and next quarter approximately for the stock market, the S&P, and ultimately the housing bubble as well?
Well, I just went through the targets that I have on the market, but how we get there, I was really expecting more, probably the May June-ish area for the stock market melt up to reach its parabolic phase. But it depends. I think this action in Iran has pushed that a little. So it could happen still in May and June, but um, and I emphasize could. Will it? I'm not sure. It could be pushed a month or so. I'm thinking maybe two. So I'm thinking maybe July-ish, June, July-ish. So that's what I'm thinking.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you for that. And again, I need the audience to pay attention on this and don't get emotional and hyperbolic. He's not saying that that has repercussions on the reset, that we're waiting for that. They're two mutually exclusive points. We always emphasize that. He's just giving you the blow up in the stock market. We believe on our side as a team that the dinar and the dong will go before the crash ultimately happens so that you have the opportunity to take advantage of all the wealth transfers, the currencies, the metals, cryptos, of course, as that season is coming up. We have President Trump right now, as you probably know, Mr. B, in the audience, in the throes today in the Senate to work to get the Save America Act passed, which right behind that is the Clarity Act, which has huge implications for cryptos, stock market, the bond market, which is artificial, everything else. And ultimately the housing market, which is going to create a downward push on that. I've already talked to different real estate people throughout the country here and there, and they've all admitted that this has now officially become a buyer's market. And even some of the hottest markets, like in Nashville, there's a major cooling trend happening with the houses. Houses are sitting longer, they're not going for as much as they were. So there's already systemic effects, and this will only continue as this process, Mr. B has stated in the past and just now, ensues. So they're two separate issues. Now, the other question I want to have, thank you for that, Mr. B. The other question I want to ask you is, what do you see? We also have a burgeoning, well, this has been kind of going back and forth, but now it's picking up steam again, right? We have China getting ready to invade Taiwan. Huge implications for Vietnam because Vietnam will be able to have the ability to break out of communism, much like Venezuela is going to do, Cuba is about to do. We pray for those folks for the hardship they're going through right now, and a whole host of countries and the domino effect vis-a-vis the reset with respect to the currencies. So that has huge implications for Vietnam. They have openly stated, as you probably know, that they want to absolutely have every intention of backing their economy and the Vietnamese dong with silver. That should skyrocket the price of silver easily into the three figures, no problem. I'm getting different reports on my side, anywhere between, again, Mike at Noble Gold is thinking roughly somewhere in the mid-April timeframe, at the latest early May. I'm getting from some other people, so I'm sort of getting a 4 to 8 week back wall, give or take, on that time frame for that price point of 150 to 200, which again, as I mentioned, effectuates the dong. But then you have the dinar moving right now, as we mentioned prior to that, and it seems like the dinar dong are going to go together, much like gold and silver will be pretty much running parallel. What are your thoughts on the China-Taiwan conflict and how that will positively affect silver?
I don't have an idea on that, but I will I will go back. You know how you were saying that we're definitely seeing a buyer's market in real estate. I recently saw a video on the Florida market, and that thing is just cratering. I mean, home, home purchases are at an all-time low. I mean, even back before the 2007, 2008 housing crisis, and it's sustained itself over the last 4 years. The problem was is that the house prices remained very strong, but they're starting to cave in now. So, when you were talking about um, the reset and how you were saying that it probably will happen way before the market melt up and then the bust, is that you're probably right, that that will occur way before the parabolic phase in the stock market, which gives your listeners who hold dinar and some of those other currencies time to be able to take advantage of things like the housing market. So I just wanted to interject that. As far as the Taiwan um, China confrontation, I don't really have any I don't really have any expertise on this, but I will tell you one thing. Until the COMEX and the LBMA get knocked out, I mean, it could happen this month. It might happen 3 months from now, or longer. I still think at that point that mechanism is going to be in there manipulating the price of silver and gold. So especially silver. So, even though that's why I didn't change my target from 125 when all these experts have said, it's going to go up, is that I still think you're going to have to wait for those exchanges to get knocked out, especially the LBMA, to, call a force majeure and let the physical price, go to its real value. And once that happens, that's when we'll see a solid 3-digit silver price, in my estimation. How long that takes, I don't know. It could be next month, or it could be again. They're very good at extending that and working with the big banks and governments to extend that. And I think the Western, the Western economies understand that, and the players and the banks. They've got so many short positions out there that it could absolutely bring the whole system down. So until that gets resolved, that's why I'm continuing to stay 125. So if that's any help at all.
Sure. No, thank you, Mr. B, for weighing in. That's what I wanted to get from you, was your honest assessment, and we certainly appreciate that. So that actually lends itself very well to my last question, which is a broad overarching question. So bear with me, Mr. B, and folks, give me some rope on this because I am trying to get to a point. So taking into account what you said, yes, they have been good. COMEX and LBMA and JP Con Morgan and the speculators on the back end with backwardization have been good to this point at manipulating the price. But you know as well as I do, Mr. B, and my audience knows, that the harder you try to knock it down, the more aggressive, as Micah said, that curve is going to go in the other direction. As I believe it was, every action has an equal and opposite reaction, what we learned in school. And so that pendulum is going to swing in the other direction. And it's going to be a hard left or right, depending on how you want to phrase it, when it comes back. It's just inevitable. They can't play this script too much longer because the jig is up. And remember, folks, and Mr. B, when you're buying dinar and dong or other currencies, you're actually buying fractions of gold and silver. Same as what you're doing with XRP Ripple. You're buying fractions of gold. Stellar Lumen is XLM, fractions of silver, which I know, Mr. B, you're a fan of. So all these mechanisms that we're diversifying in are actually going to the ultimate goal of seeing the price of silver and gold go up, because we want it to go up, particularly if you invested in it, right? folks, and you've invested in it in a variety of these different mechanisms we just talked about and talked about in the past, it all works together to the middle to make our investments go up and up and up in value because these countries are going to have to buy more of it to back their currencies with something substantive, real-time settlements, ass in the ground, something real for something real, as Bill Holter said in the past. Which concludes to my last point. Um, we talked about the Save America Act and the Clarity Act that are incoming. It's clear to us, Mr. B, that President Trump wants to revalue gold and silver. He's got Kevin Warsh coming in here shortly. As you know, the Fed today, again, as part of the script, held the rates steady, not up or down, which is going to affect inflation as we wait for this manufactured scripted regime change to happen. We will then summarily see the price of oil start to go back to its levels and then drop summarily because we're going to be drilling within America. We're going to be pulling controlling rights of the Strait of Hormuz and other areas. We've now got Japan, who's agreeing to buy oil from us, which is a big demarcation. I think you, the audience, would agree wholeheartedly, because there's a lot of factors at play. While that's going on, he's going to then just continue to let gold and silver run up and up and up as it tells a story. He's then, when he brings in Warsh, we believe it's somewhere in that point around May, make a case to the public. We should audit the Fed in Fort Knox. Hasn't been done, I believe, since 1956. We're long overdue. People are going to be like, yeah, we do need to know how much gold do we or don't we have in Fort Knox? Why do we even need the Fed? Nobody wants taxes across the board. You see where this is going. Metals continue to go up to a certain point until when he decides he wants to flip the switch and revalue gold and silver. My question to you is this, with that being said, number one, just your own personal speculation, and I have a crystal ball. When do you surmise that will happen? Number one. And number two, we got Judy Shelton, as you know, I beat the drum on this, sitting in the background there. You see her more and more in the media, more and more talking about the Fed can buy gold. We can go back to a gold standard. Long treasury bonds, 50 and 100-year bonds backed by gold. When do you see her emerging in position as the possible either complement or successor to Treasury Secretary Bessent, bringing back the gold standard to America?
That's a good question. First, I'd like to say this is that I really believe that that's why I mentioned the LBMA is that's where the Western spot prices are set. So until that gets taken out, that's where I think, and I think everybody's trying to make that happen. And I think you even have China trying to because it's part of that evil cabal banking, European banking system that has had a stranglehold over the world basically for hundreds of years. So that, that's one of the pillars is to knock out that particular thing. So I really believe getting rid of the LBMA is key, but you brought up a good point. It's the Western markets, the metals markets, the COMEX and the LBMA, they're in a bad spot because if you look at the China exchanges, the Shanghai exchange is willing to pay, $10, $12 over spot and over the Western spot. So all that silver, as the price goes down, China's going to buy that hand over fist. And eventually the contracts for each month, eventually they're going to run out of metal. It's a foregone conclusion. So my feeling is really, Donald Trump and China and Russia are going to have to take out the LBMA, which again is another tooth in the power that the European banking cartel has had to get rid of that. And I do believe that, it's coming, and I'm not sure how soon it's going to come, but I believe that's one of the things that has to be taken out before all the things that you're talking about can happen. The Julie Shelton, the Judy Shelton and all those particular things. And so, as again, we're moving that way. It's going to happen. It's just how long are they going to be able to hang on? And if you see the withdrawals each month, it's staggering how much metal that they're taking out of the LBMA each month. And again, like you said, it's going to be a hard right turn. As soon as that happens, the physical price is going to take over. I'm not sure if you remember when the nickel market got taken out a few years ago, but as soon as that happened and they had to create force majeure, they had to call force majeure and they had to settle in cash, the price of nickel just went through the roof. And so the day that that happens, you're going to see silver explode. And so I think you're right on with that. But that's what we're going to want to watch is I believe at the LBMA. And then at that point, silver can rise, silver and gold can rise to a point to where then I believe they can, just by virtue of how much it's run up, can then, do a reset and go to a gold back currency. And when gold goes high, silver is going to follow right behind it. So, those two are, linked, um, almost hand in glove. So that'll be a happy day when that comes. But anyway, that's my take. I hope.
I agree on all that. Thank you, Mr. B. And yes, it's going to be a happy day indeed. That definitely was useful. Thank you for that. So as we conclude for time's sake for you and the audience, obviously you're a close friend of mine and you're incognito. And so there's no information for people to go follow you. They're following you here. But before I wrap up my last comments, anything you'd like to say to the audience before we finish?
Yeah, there is one thing I'd like to say. So I got through about not even a quarter of the material that I had set aside. And we only talked about one reason, and that was the current uses of silver today. But I have 30 good reasons. And again, I did it for my own edification, so I could really understand why I want to buy silver. So if you want to have me come back, I'll go through the rest of that list because they're very, very good ideas and good reasons why your listening, public, the people that listen to you should buy physical silver. And so that's the last thing I wanted to say.
Sure. No, again, as you said offline, we could be here for hours, quite literally, with all the reasons you have in the statistical breakdown, which you're very good at, of course. And yeah, we can certainly work on bringing you on next month as this iterations of the reset get ready to wrap up, which we believe they are based on what we talked about. And of your own words, not taking you out of context, out of step, you agreed moments ago on the podcast that certainly the currencies could and should happen well before the crash so that God's people can take advantage of the wealth transfer and buy these things up, on their way down to get the best wealth and purchasing power, right? And then benefit from, like you said, the metals purchases, which is one of your most fundamental ethos, I would say. So yeah, we'll definitely bring you back on. It's just a lot to digest, and I think it's
It,
best.
it is.
But it's best if we do it in parts so that people can digest it and process it, much like you would a large Thanksgiving meal, for example.
Exactly. And, I mean, to add on to that, just to finish up, I
Mm-hmm.
really believe that there's a spiritual
Mm-hmm.
aspect to owning gold and silver. All through the Bible, it's kind of denoted as God's metal. And I do believe that we're going to return to where gold and silver is actually money again, like I believe the Lord has really wanted it to be and got taken from us. So we can look forward to that.
No, I fully concur. Actually, it's a great segue to my last point, Mr. B. So, folks, as you heard Mr. B, you've heard him before. If you haven't before, now you have. You see why we love him and like his invaluable wisdom and expertise well healed over many decades that helps us understand, again, where we've been, where we're going, and the most likely roadmaps to get there so you can see the pieces amalgamating on the puzzle puzzle piece chessboard, if you like. So yes, gold and silver, 5,000 plus years old. God's money. Our forefathers built our Constitution around it. It's supposed to be the only standard of weights and measures that governs our real money monetary supply, and it is exactly what we must do and where we are headed back inevitably. So if you are looking to get precious metals or roll over a 401k IRA, Noble Gold is one of the most trusted places to do it. One of the top two places by Money Metals Magazine listed to do that. Have been very good to us and to all the people that I've talked to that have used them. They've had nothing but positive things to say. And I do ask them hard questions and get into specifics. And they've talked a lot about the communication and the education and the guidance that Noble Gold gives. I myself purchased from them not but last week, and they've already reached out to me today to keep me abreast of the tracking number and where things are in the process. Very communicative. So we'll leave that link below in the description, and also cannot leave out the currencies. One of the benefits of going with this particular company that endorses the channel is that I've looked around and just to see, and most companies will offer you dinar or dong here in the States, but most do not have dinar, dong, rupiah, baht, bolivar. It's hard to get one company that has them all, but this particular company that endorses the channel does actually have them, and you can get them in circulated, uncirculated, no additional cost. Very, very seamless process. There's a lot of demand on these currencies. People are trying to get in because, like you, what we have known, people are now finding out, waking up, and trying to get in. So there is, sort of a competition to get them. So it used to be you could order them, 2, 4, 5, 10 years ago, and you could get them in a day or two, depending where you were. But now that's a little bit longer because of that reason. So just bear that in mind. But this is one of the advantages this company has. So we'll leave that link below in the video and in the description for your perusal. Mr. B, thank you for joining us as always, brother. Thank you for being a good brother all these years to me and to the channel, providing your time and energy. We will work on getting you back next month to continue this discussion and flesh it out more. Thank you so much. Have a blessed rest of your day, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon.
All right. Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Likewise.